Hi, so we did Josephine and we compared her to the Canadian model of occupational performance and engagement and a couple other models. So Josephine is a 98-year-old woman and she lives alone, but her apartment is a garage apartment attached to her son's home. There's no architectural barriers like stairs or ramps or anything like that that prevents her getting around, except she did state that she has difficulty entering and exiting her tub shower. She was referred to OT because she fell while cooking and sustained a left subcapital hip fracture, and she had surgery to repair that. Prior to the incident, her laundry was taken care of by her daughter in law, and housekeeping was taken care of every other week by a house cleaner. So she wasn't really taking on the brunt of home chores. She also stayed at home most of the time, except for weekly trips to the senior center for bingo and exercise class. And she also attended church every Sunday with her family. But now she has difficulty with the 6 steps that are at the only entrance to the church. So if she wants to continue doing that, then that's going to be something that has to be addressed. She's also a retired dressmaker and she enjoys sewing gifts for her family.
So the Canadian Model of Occupational Performance and Engagement, or also known as the CMOPE, was originally developed in 1997. The focus of this model is emphasized on the enablement and engagement of the person and their participation in their desired occupations. The components are the person factors, the environment, and their occupation. The person is in the triangle here, and it's for cognitive, affective, and physical. The core is spirituality. The environment factors are constructed by physical and social, cultural, and institutional. The occupations will be divided into their self care, productivity, and leisure. All these components are in the occupational performance in a dynamic interaction. This model is client centered, with having the word engagement as the main focus of the client. This aims for the client to have empowerment and justice in their everyday life, in their performance and development, and participating in their occupations.
So when looking at Josephine through the lens of the Canadian model of occupational performance and engagement, we're looking at her person factors. Her cognitive, affective, and spiritual factors are intact, but her physical factors are impaired due to her injury, which has created dysfunction. And she can no longer interact with her environment in the way that she had previously. They've affected her bingo and going to senior exercise class. She also has difficulty with self care tasks because she can't get in and out of the tub. She can't go to church because of the stairs. And she also was an avid seamstress before her accident. Because of this, intervention for Josephine should focus on enabling improved interaction between Josephine and her environment through these occupations that she's identified. Also, because the CMOPE talks about the interaction between the person with their environment through occupation, fall prevention should be addressed so that she's able to have continued independence in the home. We've identified a couple of interventions along the lines of the CMOPE. And the first one is enablement through environmental adaptation. Um, when you're using this intervention, a study by Chang and others said that multifactorial fall risk assessment and management programs are more effective at reducing repeat falls than environmental adaptation alone. So this intervention is going to have several components that assess Josephine and her current performance and her satisfaction with her performance. And then it's going to adapt the environment according to that assessment, such as installing grab bars where necessary, lowering out of reach items, such as maybe taking things out of tall cabinets in the kitchen that she might be reaching for, removing rugs that could be a fall hazard, and adding a shower bench so that she can get in and out of the shower. Fear of falling is also a really big indicator of repeat falls. So this intervention should also address any specific concerns that Josephine has about this. And um, client education will also be a part of this intervention.
Another intervention strategy for Josephine and her family would be advocacy. Attending church with her family every Sunday plays a huge part in the role of Josephine's IADLs and social participation. Her church has no wheel ramps and only 5 steps to enter the facility. So, yeah, the therapist and the family can advocate for the church to install divided ramps or stair tracks to facilitate Josephine's occupational performance. And due to the likelihood that Josephine will be in a wheelchair, she will need to learn how to adapt to her environment to attend church. And the use of an accessible ramp can enable Josephine and help her create a sense of independence and empowerment of her wheelchair mobility.
Okay, a couple of other interventions that we could use for Josephine are occupation-based. As she was a seamstress and she enjoys sewing, we could use that as an intervention for her. And using the pedal, foot pumps are a common effective exercise after hip angioplasty. Sewing also requires sit, stand to sit, and sit to stand movement. And a second intervention that we could use for her is chair exercises. This also includes sit to stand movements and core balance exercises, which would help her gain strength again.
Okay, so I decided to focus on enablement through occupations and environmental adaptations for my interventions. So for enablement through environmental adaptations, I thought the addition of a shower chair would create a more enabling environment for Josephine because it would allow her to enter and exit her traditional tub and shower independently and safely. And then for enablement through occupations, I thought it'd be interesting to focus on the effective functions, which are part of the personal factors for the CMOP-E. So fear of falling can go into that. It's a factor that can limit Josephine's participation and her occupations and her environment. So in a study that I found through leisure occupations such as yoga, walking, and Tai Chi, the negative responses to fear of falling can actually be reduced. So through engagement of those occupations, Josephine can feel more empowered and confident when navigating her environment.
So the model of human occupation, or also known as MOHO, was created in 2002. This model brings a holistic approach of focusing on the internal factors and the external factors that come together in making the outcome in occupation. This occupation-based model focuses on the nature and interaction of the person's motivation, the patterns of behavior, and performance. It can stretch the relationship between the person variables, environment aspects, and the occupational participation. The subsystems of the person factors are the volitional subsystem of their values and their interests, the habilitation subsystem of roles and routine, and the performance capacity subsystem of the mind, brain, and body. This client-centered model will work on Josephine to get to know what are her motivations, what is her environment like physically or socially, are there positive or negative barriers, what activities does she participate in every day that are meaningful to her. It is known to be an open system, so it can change in the input, throughout, the output, and the feedback.
So, Josephine's participation and motivation are influenced by an interaction between her internal components which could be like hindered motor skills from her injury, or the environment, which would be like her having a hard time getting in the tub or even walking up the steps at church. The act of thinking, feeling, and doing can be influenced by dynamic interaction of two separate systems of the person and environment, meaning Josephine's inner drive and support from her family may have a positive influence on her success in performing occupational tasks. The similarities between MOHO and CMOPE focuses on similar concepts that helps motivate the individual. The MOHO has a subsystem that consists of volition, which refers to the motivation, values, and interests of the client, and a CMOPE core concept is spirituality, which can be anything that motivates the person. Both of these models use measurement tools to help the therapist understand how to provide treatment based on the client. And the differences between MOHO and CMOPE is that the CMOPE is an ecological based model, and it focuses on enablement through occupational engagement and environmental adaptations. The MOHO model is an occupation based model, and the focus is on the importance of feedback from the environment for adaptation and using relevant occupations to increase the motivation and the effectiveness of interventions.
Okay, so the ecology of human performance model, also known as EHP, is an ecology-based model, and it has three constructs of person, context, and task, or person, environment, and task, sorry. It was created by Winnie Dunn in 1994, and the center of this model is context, and it means that a person cannot be separated from their past, and that their experience will always influence their performance. So the construct of person in this model includes their values, interests, and experiences, and that creates who they are internally. The constructs of context, it includes all external things that encapsulate someone. So that's their physical environment, role expectations, their disability status, or their age. And then a task is anything that is goal-directed and can sit within any role that a person associates themselves with. Tasks can change depending on the context. And so Josephine, through the eyes of the EHP, as a person, she consists of her faith and her desire for sewing and craftsmanship and her value of staying active and independent. In the sense of context in the EHP, it sees her as a 98-year-old woman who's a mother, grandmother, and who's currently at partial weight-bearing status due to her surgery. She lives in a home behind her son's house with no environmental barriers except, as earlier mentioned, the shower that's hard for her to get in and out of. And then in the eyes of the EHP, her tasks include sewing, since she makes gift for her loved ones, exercising, bingo games, and attending church. And those are all goal directed by her wanting to maintain an active, social, and faithful lifestyle. So some of the similarities between the EHP and the CMOPE is that these two both focus on enablement of the patient. So whether that's through adaptive equipment or through occupation, the EHP focuses on enablement through adaptive equipment, while the CMOPE focuses on enablement through occupation. Some differences between the EHP and the CMOP, it includes that the EHP has 5 different interventions it focuses on, and that's along with obtaining a high performance range. The CMOPE focuses on engagement, so meaning someone can be involved with the occupation even if they are not actively participating in it.
Okay, the occupational adaptation model is an occupation-based systems model that has a holistic approach focusing on the interaction between a person's internal and external factors and on the person's internal adaptive processes. It has 4 major components, which are the person, occupational environment, interaction, and adaptive response. The person element includes the sensory motor, cognitive, and psychosocial systems. And the occupational environment includes self-care, leisure, and work. The interaction element includes the press for mastery, occupational challenge, occupational role expectations, and occupational responses. The adaptive response component has 3 sub-processes: generation, evaluation, and integration. The ultimate goal of OA is to enhance a person's adaptivity within their environment. And a person displays function when they have successful adaptive capacity and relative mastery of their environment. Okay, so Josephine and the OA. Josephine's internal factors have caused a disruption in her adaptive capacity. She is unable to master certain occupations. She needs to learn to effectively use her abilities to adapt to her occupations. The demands of her environment outweigh her ability to sufficiently respond to the
demands.
Oh, okay. Okay, similarities between OA and CMOP. The environment plays a role in mitigating which activities a person can partake. They both use enablement to increase activity participation, and they both acknowledge that interaction is a component between a client and their environment or external factors. Differences between OA and CMOP. OA focuses on adaptive capacity of a person and their relative mastery of their environment. CMOP focuses on an enablement of the client, and OA outlines adaptive response to occupational challenge.
Okay, so in conclusion, each model we discussed, the CMOP-E, the MOHO, the EHP, and the OA, can all apply to Josephine's case, and they all can have a positive impact on her treatment process. Another option is that elements of each model can be combined to create a more inclusive, client-centered intervention that address her needs in the best ways possible. But regardless of which model is used, it's very important to keep a collaborative approach, a holistic approach, and a client-centered approach. And most importantly, it's important to prioritize Josephine's input and opinions.
And here are references. Thank you.